when you've got so many different opinions or frameworks that have come out over 2,000 years plus. You've got all these different denominations. You've got the Catholics versus the Protestants. You've got a lot of cults that have come out where they'll pick a verse and say, okay, this is the most important thing in the world. We're going to build our religion around it. You've got the KKK that uses the Bible to back up what they say. You've got people all over that use the Bible to back up what they want, some policy or politics or whatever it is.
What I always tell people who are beginning to study the Bible is I want to teach them, there's a particular way of studying the scriptures that I would call inductive Bible study. And it would have a minimum of 3 components: observation, interpretation, and application. Now, you can add more components to that if you want, but observation is the most important part of any study of the Bible. And observation just means read the passage and take a piece of paper and answer some very basic questions. And it would be the kind of observations that a police officer might make at the scene of a crime. Police officers not trying to jump to conclusions, not coming up with theories. The first thing they do is write down all the facts, and that's basically it, just the facts. So you would ask yourself questions as, who is mentioned in this passage? Is there a time mentioned? Is there some sort of time frame mentioned in this passage? Where does this occur? What words are being used here? Are any words repeated? You know, it's just a careful observation. And so when I'm asked to speak on a particular passage, let's say, a couple of weeks in advance, somebody might say, hey, could you do a talk on some passage in the Bible? I will spend most of my time reading that passage over and over and over again, just making observations. And your first pass, I mean, if you just read it over once, that's rather inadequate. Let's put it that way. You need to read it over and over again because you'll miss observations. Once you've got that done, then you can start moving into interpretation. And the interpretation answers the question, well, what did this mean to the people that received this letter or that the author was speaking to? What did this mean to them? This is where you might want to do some correlation with other passages in the Bible to see if other passages talk about the same thing, which might shed light on what you're reading. And there's a ton of that. It's why I read the Bible over like roughly every 8 to 9 months, is I just want a thorough background knowledge of what the Bible says on everything and everywhere, so that I'm much better positioned to do a correlation, to see things, oh, this correlates with that. And I see correlations now, let's see, I'm literally 60 years almost since I started studying the Bible for my own. I see new correlations all the time. So you'll never run out of that. And then finally, interpretation. And that is, well, not interpretation, it's application. What does this mean for me? What am I supposed to do about this? Now, interpretation is tricky. So there are mistakes not to make, and I don't have time to cover all of them, but there's 3 major categories of mistakes. One would be word study fallacies. That is, coming up with a meaning for a word that's not really legit for that passage there. The second, and there's quite a few of these. Then there was another set of fallacies called grammatical fallacies. That's where you start messing with the rules of language to make it say what you want to say. And so there's a passage on that. And then there's a third category called logical fallacies. Logical fallacies, which you can get from any philosophy program. And there's an excellent book that I want to recommend on this topic. It's by D.A. Carson. And it's called Exegetical Fallacies. And he'll look at all 3. He looks at all 3 categories and a whole ton of different examples or different types under each category. So it's inductive Bible study coupled with a real sensitivity to committing fallacies. And most of the fallacies start getting committed when you want to make it fit what you want it to say, either because you want to make it fit your systematic theology, or probably even more common today is you want to make the Bible fit your culture. You want to make it culturally acceptable. And so what it says, for example, in sexuality, you want to reinterpret those passages so that it's acceptable to culture. And so culture then becomes the mold within which the Bible must fit. And to do that, we will have to commit fallacies of either logic, grammatical fallacies or word study fallacies, or even just in general blatant cherry picking and glossing over.